Obsession, the new horror phenomenon directed by Curry Barker, his debut film. It was a blood soaked, nail biting thrill ride, and we're going to talk about how it is probably one of the best horror movies to come out this year. Some really solid performances, really solid camera work, story wise, wonderful, and stay tuned. All right, now the first thing I want to talk about with Obsession is the tone of the film, which is it has a very stylistic, slow burn feel to it. You could tell it was inspired by a lot of the modern horror films that came out over the past couple of years. The Host sticks out. It Follows also sticks out by David Robert Mitchell. And obviously, Hereditary, which is a film that I was reading Curry Barker had the entire cast, sit down and watch. Obviously, you could tell right away from Indy Navarrati's breakout performance. Toni Collette was a main inspiration, kind of on. She had the brink of insanity, crossing over the line to comedic, but she balanced it out pretty well because you want some moments of levity in this very intense film. The progression of the movie just kind of kept getting closer and closer to insanity until it finally reached a blood soaking end, which was very fun to watch just because of Indy Navarrati's performance. She really stood out in my mind. She really had hints of Isabella Johnny's performance in Possession, where she was acting very unhinged. There was a smart choice between Curry Barker and Indy Navarrati, where the real Freaky Nikki, aka Nikki, broke through, and you could really feel the pain and anguish that she was feeling inside of her brain, where she was trapped, and the whole progression, watching her go in and out of two different characters, it was very impressive for someone of that age, someone who's just jumping into horror films. This seems like it's her first horror film, and she really grounded the performance in a way where you could see that she's going to be a future force of nature in the horror genre if she does continue to go down this path. And among the pain and anguish that she's feeling, you could also feel the sadness behind her eyes, and that scene where she is, mild spoilers, where she is sleeping, and you could tell that another force is taking over her body because she wants Bear to kill her in her sleep because she knows she is not herself. Something has possessed her and taken over her body. And it was just also a brilliant play on Mike Johnson's part, who plays Bear, to really portray himself as an innocent guy, because the more he portrayed himself as someone who is innocent, the audience can clearly see that he is the number one villain of this story. I mean, he completely stripped away Nikki's will to live, to think, to breathe even. He completely made her his toy, practically. And that's where the horror lies in this very layered story. It is not just a stalker story, and the way Curry Barker flipped this type of stalker subgenre, the story of just your average stalker, whereas usually it's from the perspective of the person who is being stalked, it is sort of from the possession of the person who is doing the stalking, because Nikki's performance is just so influencing the story that it is her ultimate decision to decide where the story ends. What was also great about Indy Navarrati's performance is that you never really could predict with how Nikki was going to move and what she was going to say, and how impossible it was to calculate everything she was doing. And that's a very difficult thing to do um, with this type of story, except you had that MacGuffin of the One Wish Willow, which adding an extra element of magic to this movie really sent it over the edge into the brink of insanity, because you have this extra thing in the film that is causing this person to be possessed, and the whole time Bear is wondering why she's acting this way and why she's saying all these things and acting crazy, for lack of a better word. And the true villainous nature underneath all the layers of his nice guy persona, is that he was the reason why she's acting this way, and now all of a sudden he wants everything to go back to normal, uh, and wants to take back his take back his wish, not his wish, what? Um, Sandwich. Would love a sandwich right now. He couldn't deal with the consequences, and another reason why I think this movie works on a primal level is that it really goes to show that this really happens. This type of abuse, this type of manipulation, it happens in the real world, and it is so relatable, and it is a true horror story. So that's where a lot of people, I feel like, can gravitate towards it, because it is not just a horror movie. It is a really internal struggle with feelings of guilt and feelings of shame, or no shame, for lack thereof. Bear feels no shame whatsoever to what Nikki actually wants. And Curry Barker truly just directed an incredible, nuanced film with a lot of lingering camera shots. I truly miss directors who really likes to settle into the scene and lets you feel that discomfort, and lets you feel the environment around all the characters, rather than just make quick cuts and make everything such an action type of vibe. There's plenty of thrill-seeking moments in Obsession, but I think the movie thrives off of the discomfort, and there are plenty of uncomfortable scenes in this film where they're playing that spin the bottle sort of game, or whatever that game was, where Sarah, who also played brilliantly by Megan Lawless, very solid chemistry amongst the whole supporting cast with the actual cast. Megan Lawless, who plays Sarah, and Cooper Tomlinson, who plays Ian, if I'm not mistaken. They all work really well as a friend group, but when Sarah goes to kiss Bear, or that's like the dare, Nikki is truly menacing in that moment of just maniacally moving over to Bear and moving Sarah's chair. No one really knows what's going on. Um, and Curry Barker truly directed that slow burn scene in such a way that you really don't know what's going to happen. And I think when you have a slow burn type of movie like this, it all banks on the payoff. If the payoff doesn't work, if the end of the movie feels, if you feel shortchanged by the end of the movie, the rest of the movie didn't work. Everything leading up to that point was truly for nothing, or something even far worse, boring. And you never want something to be boring. And in this case, the payoff to Obsession was just the blood-soaked finale that we all hoped for. We knew something was going to happen. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time, wondering how it was going to end, and Curry Barker really pulled no punches with the blood and the cowardly way that Bear decided to go out. And you see the glimpse of demonic Nikki, freaky Nikki, breaking the one wish Willow and wanting Bear to be obsessed with her, and then he just dies. Sorry, this is going to be a spoiler review, because there are kind of no ways to talk about this movie without getting into spoiler territory. But that was a very disturbing ending, and I love a director who decides to go with the ending that is not necessarily happy. Kind of leaves you on a cliffhanger of having no hope, because unfortunately sometimes life does not always give you the happy ending. It was kind of a pseudo happy ending, because Nikki snaps out of the one wish Willow spell, but she also has to live with the fact of everything that she's done, and live with the fact that she was kind of her brain was tormented and taken a hold by someone who she thought was her friend. It was all very interesting to watch. It was a very interesting way to pay off that story, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd. You could follow me on Letterboxd at Parmesan Playboy to get another long paragraph style review of it. Even though if you're watching this, you don't need to read it. You could just listen to the sound of my bumbling, stuttering, mumbling voice. Now, I did have an all-around positive experience with Obsession, and I know for a fact that it is going to be on my rewatch list as soon as it comes to physical media, or on demand, or streaming, or whatever. But I did want to discuss one flaw that I had with the movie, and that's in the not necessarily directing, uh, but I'm going to credit Curry Barker with it because it has to do something with the camera work, and that is the very blurred out background shots in a lot of the scenes. Um, Personally, I love the films of the 70s, 80s, even 90s that it doesn't look like an iPhone portrait shot where the background is blurred out and you could only see the actors really up close. Now, not to do a disservice to Curry Barker, but I would have loved to live that environment a little more, see the color in the background, and see, you know, really get a sense of where they are. It adds a whole lot of atmosphere when you don't blur out the entire background and just see the actors. But that was my only flaw uh, in the film. I know Curry Barker has been tapped to do the a new reboot, another reboot of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think he's a really solid pick after seeing Obsession, uh, but I really think he needs to do his homework just a little bit. Study some John Carpenter, uh, Toby Hooper, all of the classic horror greats that really let the environment be a character in the film, as opposed to just seeing two actors' faces with blindness in the background. So that was my review of Obsession. If you want to follow me on Instagram, Doug's.supernatural, for more movie related stuff. I'm always talking about movies. Please talk to me about movies. Let me know what you thought about Obsession. Let me know what you thought about the wonderful, unique performance of Indy Navarrete and the directing style of Curry Barker. And that's it for now.